What would you do if in one moment your entire life changed? Cal Rugby star Robert Paylor had that moment. He was told he would never walk again after he got injured during the College Rugby Championships in 2017. 8 years later, he is walking and he's teaching the rest of us how to get back up when life knocks you down. In this Dying to Ask, how Robert went from paralyzed to powerful, the title of his new book. Why mindset is so critical in any physical recovery, the question he asks himself to push through hard days, and how he found new purpose after his injury. Also, a reality check on who really benefits when you forgive someone. Subscribe to Dying to Ask on Apple or Spotify, or you can watch it right here. Hey, Robert, welcome to the Dying to Ask podcast.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, we've been trying to do this now for a couple of months. I've really been looking forward to this. I'm excited to get to talk to you today. I'm going to start off with a question. I've actually interviewed a number of rugby players through my Olympics coverage. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked all of them. And I'm going to guess that you give me the same answer. And the question is, did you grow up always wanting to hit people?
Yes. No, it's so funny. That's hilarious. I remember the first time I actually heard of rugby, and because I was like, gosh, 13 years old, I want to say. Kind of old to hear of a sport for the first time. And one of my best friend's mom had gone to New Zealand to watch a match to see the All Blacks play, this legendary team. And it was in competition that somebody lost their mouth guard. They went into contact and they bit through their lip, like teeth through the skin. And I'm like, that's crazy. I'll never do that. And then lo and behold, a few years later, there I am on the field tackling people and just having a blast. So it's so funny how it all works out.
So what was it that you loved about rugby? Because I find that there are like a handful of sports that like you just have a certain personality if you really love it that much.
Right. It's so funny. Because rugby is a very niche sport in America, right? It's not that common, but here in the Sacramento area, it's really a hotbed for American rugby. I want to say this
Huge.
area has produced more international players and those who have represented the United States than any other metropolitan area in America. And of course, Jesuit High School has a great success record. I think it's goodness, 10 or 11 national championships in the program's lifetime. So when I went to Jesuit High School, I was, of course, really immersed in this culture. And you go there on campus and people were throwing rugby balls around and they got their short shorts in their backpack. And when I was a sophomore, I decided I wanted to give it a shot. And the rest was history for me. I got MVP my first year playing, and we won a national championship that year. It was just one of the best decisions I ever made. And I loved this continuous nature of the game. I loved the camaraderie where afterwards we're having Gatorades and pizzas with the other team. And teams would come in from Great Britain and Australia and Canada and New Zealand to play us. So you had this global aspect to it. It was just a perfect cocktail of everything I was
Yeah.
looking for in a sport.
So your book is called Paralyzed to Powerful: Lessons from a Quadriplegic's Journey. The book came out just a couple of months ago. It's such an interesting book to me. First of all, it's really well done, like
Thank you.
really well done. And I read it all summer long. I would pick it up. I would do it like a chapter at a time because I really like
Yeah.
reflected on it. I really enjoyed it. But it's such an interesting mix of like memoir of your life experience and what happened to you and what happened after that, but
Mhm.
also motivation. So I really want people to read this book. So I don't want to give away everything in it, but
Yeah.
there, like, you tell all of it. Anything anybody's ever wondered about what happens when you have an accident like this, you go into all the details. So definitely read the book. But why don't you just, for people who aren't familiar with your story, explain what happened on May 6th of 2017. You're in a national championship playing for your school, Cal Berkeley.
Yeah, it's the day everything changed for me on May 6, 2017. And here I come in getting ready for a national championship. I thought this was going to be the best day of my life. When you're an athlete, thinking and dreaming of what you want to do in your future, Division 1 national championship is at the top of that list. So I'm really living my dream here. And then it's very early on in this game that I'm competing in what's called a maul, which is when the bigger guys, we group up in a single unit, we start pushing to advance the ball, and the defense's job is to come straight in. They try to stop us from moving forward. It's a boiler room. It's where the big guys thrive. And I was a big guy, 6'5", 245 pounds. This is my moment. I'm drooling here on the field, thinking, let's go, Rob, drive this thing in. But then as I do that, the opposing players start making illegal moves and the referee's not calling anything. Most notably, their number 8 binds me in a headlock. So he's got my chin pinned down to my chest. Another player chomps me down by my legs. I start getting rode to the ground. This guy who's got his arm around my neck continues to torque down. I can't get my head up. And I just close my eyes. I grit my teeth. I feel this god awful crunch in my neck. And then just poof. Can't move anything. Can't feel anything. I didn't lose consciousness for a second. So I'm just as clear and aware as I am right now in this conversation, but totally numb and motionless from about my collarbone down. My medical staff comes over, they put me on a stretcher, and I go to the hospital. And my doctor tells me that I'll never walk again. I'll never move my hands, that I'll be lucky if one day I can do something like pick up a piece of pizza and bring it to my face. And that's if I survive a potentially life-threatening surgery and the medical complications that would soon follow. And I remember just thinking in my mind in that moment, kind of like, you don't know me, and you don't know how hard I'm willing to work at this. If I need to put myself in the top 1% of outcomes, I'm going to put in the top 1% of effort. And I decided to go full on into this recovery. And that's where this journey all really began on May 6th of 2017.
So you were 20?
I was 20 years old, a sophomore in college.
Yeah, I mean, I have an almost 20-year-old right now. I will tell you, and if he happens to be listening to this, I mean this with affection. That's a lot of self-awareness
Yeah.
in a moment like that. Did that take a little while to settle in, or was that just the mindset the whole way? Is that just you?
You know, I want to, so this is chapter 2 of my book, is Build a Foundation. I think it's so critical and something that we should all be really aware of right now, that we can't wait for a challenge to strike us in life before we start challenging ourselves. We really need to seek that self-growth and build that foundation. So if a storm ever does hit, we're going to stand strong. And I was very fortunate that I was intentional about that before my recovery. Athletics was a really big part of that, where I'm used to early mornings, intense workouts, really seeking out
Suffering.
suffering and discomfort, knowing that it's this source of growth. I mean, Deirdre, whenever I would go into a workout, if I the next day I wasn't sore, I was mad. I mean, I was like genuinely mad at myself because I knew I like didn't give it everything that I had. So I'm taking the same concept and then looking at the high performing teams I was able to be a part of, like the Jesuit High School and Cal Rugby program, where we're number one year in and year out. And if we're number 2 in the nation, it's a really bad year. We're really just expecting that excellence out of ourselves and really putting ourselves in the statistical outlier group. So when I had this doctor tell me that I wasn't going to be able to move my body ever again, that's why I was able to have that positive response to know, like, I have a significant task ahead of me and I can't completely dismiss his words, but I have to have that hope, that something to grab onto, a vision in front of me. Picking up a piece of pizza isn't a vision, but being able to stand up out of my wheelchair one day, that's a vision, and that's something that I'll fight for.
When you're used to that level of physical activity, and a lifestyle where the next day, if you didn't feel the workout, it almost didn't count. What's that like to go to not being able to move at all?
Horribly difficult in so many ways. So one is how it just tortured my body. So I eventually wake up from the surgery, but I couldn't swallow anything. So I couldn't eat or drink. And I contracted pneumonia, but I couldn't cough. And I wasn't moving anything. I was getting a liquid diet through my nose down to my stomach through a tube that was fed into my body, probably maybe 1,500 calories a day, if I could maybe get that. You got to think, when I was an athlete, I mean, I was putting down 3,000 plus calories a day. Like, yeah, it's literally a snack. I mean, it's half. So I lost 60 pounds in 1 month from that immobility and inability to nourish my body as well. So that's literally 2 pounds a day that I'm just watching shed away from me, like ice melting on a warm day. And so then it kind of leads into that mental component as well, where this is my identity. This is what I love to do with my life. And it's one thing to have to deal with it for a week or a month or a couple months, but it's another to deal with that potential inevitability that I will be enduring this for the rest of my life. And that's something that was most difficult. That's where these principles really, really laid in. And I think what helped me most in that initial period was that support that I had from others, where I didn't spend a moment alone. And I had my mom sleeping on a chair by my bedside for 2 months. And I had my teammates and friends coming in like a revolving door, and just complete strangers believing in me when others didn't. Whenever I had those moments of doubt, I had them to really put me on their shoulders and carry me forward. And that really
And
helped
you had
me.
a lot of like perfect strangers. You can tell I liked the book, Robert, because of all the stuff.
I know, I love
That's
that.
that's always the code with me when I interview somebody who's written a book, is if I destroyed it with all my like notes.
Right.
I loved it. There's one part where you talk about like all the messages that you got from like total strangers. And I've always wondered, like, when people get onto a Facebook message and they put something like, is it meaningful? Does it actually make an impact? And for you, it really did. Like,
Mhm.
here's one that you wrote. Robert, we send you best wishes from New Zealand, speaking of rugby.
Right.
You clearly have a strong mana from what I've heard about you from Coach Tom Billups. This is a hell of a challenge for you, but a strong, resilient, good man like you will see it through. All the best. And then you go on to say, those messages fueled me every day. I
Mhm.
read them as soon as I could, and they made me realize I'm not just fighting for myself. So early
Mhm.
on, it seems like you could see that there was going to be a bigger picture, that maybe you were meant to do something with this experience.
Absolutely. It was really the seeds that were being planted for this greater purpose that I now have in my life. And I think that was the greatest journey of all through this journey, was finding purpose, because before my injury, my purpose was being a great rugby player. That's
Yeah.
what got me up out of bed in the morning. That's what I was most excited about and looking forward to, and my goals for my future. And then in one moment, with something I couldn't control at all, it's gone. And I'm a really optimistic guy, but I knew I was never going to step back on the rugby field. I needed something to replace that. And it's so funny, it really started with me needing some help. As you can understand, breaking your neck is not a good financial decision. We needed a lot of help. So my best friend's mom had started up a GoFundMe campaign to help pay for these rehabilitation expenses and long-term expenses. And I started sharing this journey more openly, and these milestones and the challenges that I was going through. And when I would see messages like that of people who were giving me their love and giving me their support, that's what really kept me moving forward. And it's amazing how much of an impact we can make on someone's life when we just take a few minutes out of our day to give some hope.
Were you a sharer like that before the accident?
No, no, my friends like had to practically force me to start
Yeah.
social media accounts and stuff like that. I mean, I love, being in person and having conversations, but just was not really into sharing my life and like kind of that public social media context. But as I started seeing the positive reactions that me sharing my story was starting to get, I started to see that purpose where this injury had taken so much away from me, but it gave me this story and this ability to help people in a way
Hmm.
that I didn't have when I was playing rugby. So that's where I
Right.
really saw this starting and this purpose.
I bet you also weren't really good at taking help from people before the accident either.
No, no, I was a very independent person. If I would avoid asking for help at all costs, and then I found myself in the situation where I can't swallow anything, I can't feed myself, I can't go to the bathroom on my own, I can't even scratch my nose when it itches. I had to ask for help for about everything, and it really humbled me. It made me have to put that aside. And but I started to realizing that asking for help is not this weak thing to do. It's a very strong thing to do. It's a brave thing to do. And when we do it, there's just so much more that we can achieve. So I've really leaned into that asking for help. And I think going it alone is really just a last resort option, honestly.
So you had two doctors who each said something very different. So you have the one doctor who's like, you'll be lucky if you ever feed yourself a piece of pizza. Like,
Right.
that's your goal, which did not work for you. But then at one point you moved to a rehab center in Colorado, and you have another doctor who goes, I don't know what you're going to be able to do, because I've been
Yeah.
proven wrong a number of times with people who have shown me what they can do if they get the mindset and the experts working together.
Hmm.
That person put you down a different kind of path. What was the difference for you, having gone through something so traumatic, of having somebody who just offered something as simple as hope?
It was critically different, and you're right. It's all about hope, and I think the intentions of that first doctor were actually really, really genuine, really good. This doctor didn't want to build up false hope just to one day have it eventually be crushed, because 99 times out of 100, honestly, he would have been right. And I had three
Mhm.
separate neurologists who looked at my scans, and all of them privately said, which I found out later, that there was really no hope of recovery with the damage that was done to my spinal cord. So this person had really good intentions, but I think in him trying not to give me false hope, he risked giving me false hopelessness. And that's something we don't think a lot about, where there's a lot of people who hear a prognosis like that and say, why would I even try to persevere through this injury? I just had someone who's dedicated their entire life to diagnosing a situation like this tell me that all my efforts are essentially for naught. Why work that hard? And because of that, maybe they did have that potential through their injury and what was still intact in their spinal cord to be able to have a really significant recovery, but they didn't have that necessary level of hope that was needed to be able to do that. So I think that Craig Hospital approach, which I received from that second doctor, was just perfect. Don't try to predict the future and say things that you really aren't certain of. I think their approach of, Robert, we don't know what's going to happen to you, but we're going to give it everything we've got, was perfect, because it wasn't false hope. It wasn't false hopelessness. It was that adequate approach where it's like, there is a chance. This isn't impossible, but you have the full strength and support of this team. I think that was perfect. And it really just fueled me, where I was ready to go for 8 to 9 hours of rehab a day and get everything that my injury would allow me to get.
I mean, you made tremendous progress, and even at one point, you were able to go back to Berkeley to finish your
Right.
education at the Haas School of Business, with the help of some of your coworker or your teammates from the team.
Yeah, that was so, what a wonderful lesson in team there. And just to give some folks context, success of the Cal Rugby program, at the time we have 34 national championships, with the tournament having existed since 1980s. That's 34 championships in 45 years. I think the only team that has a better track record than us is the Harlem Globetrotters, and their games are
Yeah,
rigged. Like, we're not playing
that's
the
true.
Washington Generals every week. So you look at this incredible rugby success, but it's really built on this fantastic culture and sense of team that really supported me in my recovery. I don't know if all the listeners have been to the Berkeley campus, but we all know the hills of that area in San Francisco, Oakland. It's hills for days. I mean, they make movies out of these things. And I don't care who you are. You could be the Lance Armstrong of pushing wheelchairs. Eventually, these hills are going to win, and I needed help. So my rugby teammates put together a live updating spreadsheet of all my classes and all my workouts, where I needed to go, when I needed to be there. And they would sign up for slots on this spreadsheet, tell me get around campus. So my rugby teammates did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And honestly, I wouldn't have graduated if it weren't for my rugby team. So it's just an amazing culture there. And beyond that, I had Tom Billups, our associate head coach and head of strength and conditioning, in the gym with me for about an hour and a half, 4 or 5 days a week, helping me do my rehab. I didn't even have to ask him to take that on.
Wow.
It's just incredible, the people in that program, and they've changed my life.
And on the day of your graduation, what did you do? It was not eating a piece of pizza, or if
It
it was an
wasn't.
addition. But
Nope.
what did you do that just blew people away?
It was in the Greek theater, packed to capacity, about 15,000 people. And I stood up on my own 2 feet to receive my diploma from the #1 public university in the world. And I remember my name being called, and I had Coach Billups right in front of me, and my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, behind me. And I remember them call my name, Robert, Jeffrey, Paler, and I'm pushing my feet into the ground as hard as I can, trying to get 6'5" up into the air, and took those few steps to then receive my diploma. I remember I turned, Coach Billups put the diploma in my hand, and I put it in the air as high as I could. Like, such a triumphant moment. There was not a dry eye there in the Greek theater, and the crowd, I mean, I can hear it in my mind now, just how loud of a roar that was. And that's a moment that I go back to a lot whenever I'm having a tough moment. It was just one of the best days of my life.
You know, during that time at Cal, you had an opportunity to give a speech to some of the students there. And that also became another one of these turning points in your story. And you write a
Yes.
lot about that in the book as well, about telling the story and watching how people react. What did you realize in that moment of being so vulnerable with maybe strangers is the power of storytelling?
Yeah, this is where my purpose was so clear to me. It was very difficult for me to get into the Haas School of Business. This is a very competitive school. So once I got in, I met with one of my professors, or professors to be, and he said, Robert, so great to have you here. Really excited. Would you please come and talk to my class? You have this amazing story, but beyond that, these insights that I think really can help them, because you have this very visible challenge. I mean, here I am, I'm still in a wheelchair today. I have atrophy on my body, it's clear that I deal with very significant challenges every day. Just by looking at me, you can see that. But for so many of us, that adversity, those desires, they lie within. Nobody can see what's going on. And just like I'm paralyzed physically, we all have things that paralyze us mentally or emotionally. Think fear, grief, doubt, stress, burnout. All these things can be just as crippling and just as real as any physical paralysis. That was the groundwork that was laid out for me in this speech. I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to do it. So I got together with my coach, Jack Clark, the head coach of Cal Rugby, who's a legendary culture consultant and speaker and cares so much about me and my story and my success. There was not a better mentor that I could have for getting ready to do this. And I crafted what was the first 20 minutes of my speech and this very similar theme of what you see in Paralyzed to Powerful. And I'm sharing my story. I'm talking about these tools. And over the course of it, these students, they're laughing. They're crying, standing ovation in the end. Afterwards, people coming up to me, confiding in me, really difficult situations that they were going through and how this helped them. I went back to my dorm room right after that speech and I was like, this is it. This is what I'm here to do. This is the answer to all of these challenges that I've been through. Being able to take what should have been the worst thing that could ever happen to me and turning it into a gift. And it's this gift that I can share with other people. And it was on that day that I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It all started there in that Haas Business School class.
And this is, what has now become your profession, is sharing this story and traveling all over the place, kind of telling it. Now, for anybody who's watching this on YouTube, they're seeing your arms go all over the place. So clearly you have been able to regain a lot more movement than people had predicted. Where is your recovery at this point? And you're 8 years out. I know that a lot of doctors will put like time limits on certain things and when they expect most of recovery to happen with an accident like this, but kind of update us on what's happened physically.
It's absolutely incredible. So you're right. I'm talking like an Italian, moving my hands.
Right.
So I've had about 80% return in my upper body. I can now stand up out of my wheelchair into my walker on my own. I can walk 500 yards in my walker. One step would have been a miracle. So 500 yards is just incredible. But you're right. When you have an injury like this, you start getting these expectations, sort of kind of tampering things down for long-term recovery, where my doctors told me your optimal window of recovery is in your first 6 to 9 months, and your total window of recovery is in your first 2 to 3 years. After that point, you really shouldn't expect to see any sort of progress. That's where you hit this plateau. And it was one day before the 8-year anniversary of my injury this year that I hit that milestone of being able to walk 500 yards in my walker. So I think it just shows that it's not all about intensity in very short periods of time to seek progress in life. It's really about consistency over time. And that's something that I'm really proud of. I keep track of the days that it's been since my injury. So today, right now, it's day 3033. Since May 6, 2017. I try to stack those days and really be intentional about them. I share them on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. And I think that's what one of the things I'm most proud of is just being able to do this for a very long time. And it showed that even though this progress is kind of like a staircase, it's not like this even trend line where it's just a little better every day. There'll be months where I don't have any progress, but then it just shoots up and I stay there and it shoots up. So as you trend line this out over the long run, it's really incredible what I'm doing. And I talk to my doctors now who are supposed to have, of course, tampered expectations. And they say, Robert, you've had so much progress to date. You continue to progress and the work ethic is there. I see no reason why one day you won't be wheelchair independent and why you won't be walking. It's just incredible to be able to hear news like that. And
do they have any explanation? I mean, obviously you had like incredible athletic talent and strength. I mean, do they think that's maybe part of it, or do they just not know?
In the end of the day, we just don't know, but we can take some really educated guesses. I'd say from the athletic component, all of it is in the mind. And my body being healthy helped me to endure that initial period of pneumonia and my inability to swallow, where I was enduring a lot of physical duress. I made it through that. I survived in a situation where I very well couldn't have. But in the long run, it's that mental component. It's all about that mindset. And in neurological recovery, what you're really seeking to do is rewire your nervous system. There's a lot of redundancies, a lot of interconnected pathways in your nervous system. So over thousands, millions of repetitions, your brain will start to experiment with using new pathways to achieve a movement or sensory function. So even though one nerve that you used to use to be able to open your hand might be gone, it might be damaged, it will use another one that connects to that pathway to be able to open your hand, wiggle your toes, connecting all these different pathways to where one day you might be walking. And that's what I've been doing, rewiring my nervous system.
Well, that's so interesting. And it also explains how you said, like, you could go months and not think you're seeing a progress. And then all of a sudden it's like, here we go. It's like the
Right.
nerve woke up. They found it.
Exactly.
Let's go over some of the lessons from your book. There are so many really good ones. I just want to pull out a couple of them. This is somewhat, I think, would, you probably tell in a lot of the public speaking that you do. The first one is pretty obvious, but it's control your mindset, which for most of us is easier said than done. Is there a hack that you have that you like to share with people as a good place to start?
Controlling your mindset is such a simple principle, but it's not easy. And the first time I heard that I could control my mindset was on the first day of my injury, where I had just received this prognosis from my doctor and that I might not make it through this upcoming surgery I had. So the first phone call I made was my spiritual director. I'm asking for prayers and advice, and he gives me this piece of advice that changed my life. It gave me so much power in a powerless situation. And he said, Robert, throughout this journey, there's gonna be so many things that you can't control, but the one thing you'll always have control over is your mindset. So your positivity, your ambition, your willingness to wake up every day and fight this is up to you. And this injury can't take that away from you. And I think that rings so true, that success isn't determined just by our circumstances in life. It's really about the way that we respond to our circumstances. That response is something we always maintain the power to control. So when we have those early mornings and we're sleeping in bed and we are so warm under the covers, but we know that by getting up and getting after it, we're going to have a better day. It's one of those moments where I think, control your mindset, take the sheets off, start getting ready for the day. Or when we're thinking of, like, we have an exercise goal and we don't really want to go to this workout, think, control your mindset, just do it. Just go for this workout. Take that first step and continue that momentum. And for me, when I was in the hospital and I had breathing treatments and they're putting tubes up my nose into my stomach, it was thinking, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. Control your mindset, accept the treatment, keep moving forward. So I think it's really this muscle. And as you continue to make those uncomfortable decisions over time, you build that muscle. It can atrophy as well. So it's really important for us to seek that daily discomfort and do things that we know are going to be better for us in the long run, but might just be, like, in the short term, more difficult to do.
Negativity breeds negativity. And you talk about the importance of a mental diet.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And what does that look like for you?
I think having a strong mental diet is another really key component of being able to control your mindset. I don't think we think of the quality of information coming into our minds like having a mental diet, because we all understand the physical diet, right? It's nasty in, nasty out, or if you eat well, your body will perform better. I think the same thing goes for our minds. So the more we take in negative information or we have negative interactions throughout a day, the more negative we're going to be as people and the less able we are to take on our challenges. But the more positive information we take in and positive interactions we have throughout a day, the more positive we're going to be as people and the more able we are to take on our challenges. So when I was in that hospital and I had all these nurses and doctors telling me, Robert, you're never going to walk again. You're never going to move your hands. And the sooner you realize that, the better it will be for your mental health. That was poison to my mental diet. So I had to be able to recognize that and neutralize it in a sense, but then really be cognizant of some positive information coming in to get above that equilibrium line. So I couldn't hold my phone at the time, but I'd ask my brother, Brant, hold the phone in front of me. Let's start scrolling through messages from supporters or look up stories of people who have been in situations like mine before and see that physical healing, mental, emotional healing that I really needed. I needed to see it done and I needed something to fight for. So I think that's something that we should all be really cognizant of and have really good intentional habits built into our day. So that's things like waking up in the morning and listening to a good podcast that we know is going to give us that boost, or like wake up 15 minutes earlier and don't look at your phone right away. Don't go for that. Just enjoy that first cup of coffee, like in the peace of the morning. Let that be the thing that starts you off. I think as we do these things over time, we just become more positive people and we're more in control of our
I
mindsets.
bet you must have so many people, like probably around the world, who have been through, lost their mobility for whatever reason, who are probably watching your videos and they're seeing. I mean, I played your Instagram feed. I just played like one after another as I was driving home yesterday.
Yeah.
Probably went for like 30 minutes. And it was interesting because it played them in reverse. So I
Oh,
watched
yeah.
you like you were progressing backwards. So it really
Yeah.
like highlighted how much progress you made. But we saw everything from you walking to you, how do I get into my truck? Like you do a lot of like the how do I do things that I
Mm.
would imagine are very uplifting and positive for people to see what's even possible.
Totally. I know for me, when I saw those examples in the hospital, it showed me just how much I could do and how fulfilling of a life I could have in a
Yeah.
wheelchair. So it means a lot for me to be able to share that with others who are in situations that I was in 8 years
Hmm.
ago. But then just for the general audience to really welcome them into what I think is such a fascinating life and approach to being able to adapt and do things that others can do just in different adaptable ways.
There's another lesson in the book that you talk about called compared to what?
Mm.
What does that analogy mean for you?
Compared to what I think is such a powerful tool, and it uses perspective in this really healthy way, which so often I think we use perspective in the worst ways. We
Oh,
look
it
at the
makes you feel
people.
terrible.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think social media really breeds that nowadays, where we just see the most perfect aspects of everybody's life. We see people who seemingly have everything going on, have everything that we want. We compare ourselves to that, and we feel really down about ourselves and our situations. I think what we don't do is spend enough time looking at those who have a lot less than us. Those people, those millions of people in the world right now who would give anything to be in our situation than their own. I remember the moment that I first heard this phrase. I was in Lourdes, France. It was exactly 1 year after my injury. And for those who don't know a lot about the city of Lourdes, it's a place of miraculous healing. So there's so many sick and injured people who go there every year. So I'm surrounded by people who have stage 4 cancer, for people who have ALS, who are telling me, Robert, I would give anything just to have more time to be with my spouse, to be with my family. And I'm thinking in my mind, remind me not to complain about anything ever again. I'm tired, but compared to what? There's so much that I go through, but compared to what? There's so much that I can do, and there's so much that I do have. So I use this compared to what statement in the most respectful way possible, to where I am going to appreciate all these gifts that I have that these people I'm talking to would give anything to be able to have. I can't look that over. I think that compared to what phrase is just a wonderful way to not dismiss our challenges. I think it's really unhealthy if we dismiss our challenges. It just puts us into perspective and helps us realize that what we go through is overcomable. There's so much that we can achieve, and there's so much that we ought to be grateful for in our lives.
Before we get to the last lesson I want to discuss with you, there's one thing that I have such respect for you because I'm not sure I'm a good enough person that I could get to this. And you have. You were able to forgive the person who did the maneuver on you
Mm,
that shouldn't have been done, that the refs
yeah.
didn't call. Um, and that person and even the organization that you played for, USA Rugby, the way I understand it is you never got really an apology over any of it or real
Mhm.
recognition that you got wronged big time. Is that true?
That is true. I was injured due to an illegal move. You cannot wrap someone around their neck and drive their skull into the turf in the sport of rugby, especially rendering them a quadriplegic. Um, this person has never apologized to me. I haven't had any sort of contact with this player in these last 8 years, but I forgive him whether he's sorry or not. Now, it was not easy for me to be able to say those words early on in my journey because I was looking at pictures and videos of someone causing everything that I was going through, where I couldn't breathe, I couldn't eat. It seemed like I might not be able to ever again for the rest of my life. And I was going through that not because I did something stupid or not because of just this fluke accident, but because someone did something to me and broke the laws of our game. And in that moment, I just thought, I can't look behind me. I can't look in my past. I need to be looking forward because that's where I'm going. And I saw the only way to be able to do that was through forgiveness. So, regardless of what I felt internally, I chose to say those words, I forgive him and I wish him well. And as I said those words and time went on, I think what I allowed to happen was time to run its course, to where I wasn't putting fuel on that fire of rage. I was really letting it burn itself out over time. And as I stayed on that path of forgiveness and weeks turned into months, that hatred slowly went down and that animosity eventually vanished to where here I am today, just completely freed from all that because I chose to focus on what I could control in this forgiveness. So that was really one of the most significant journeys that I went through all of this, was that journey of forgiveness. And there's not that many generalities in life that I think just always apply, but I think forgiveness is one of them because it's not just about removing guilt from someone who did wrong to us. It's really about removing those negative attachments from those who were wronged. And I think that's really the true gift of forgiveness that we should focus on, and why I think it's just always the answer, because forgiveness is very much about healing ourselves.
Yeah, I was going to say you free yourself when you
Right.
forgive someone else, which brings us to the last lesson that I wanted to talk about, which is worthy of love. And you have been called lots of things, football or rugby star and athlete and student athlete and at one point quadriplegic, then husband. You mentioned your wife, and soon it's going to be daddy.
That's right. That's right. Best promotion ever.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it is, that, I put it at the end of the book because it was one of the last big milestones or epiphanies that I had, or a journey that I had to go through. Because for many years, I looked in the mirror and I was kind of disgusted with myself. Before my injury, you got to think, here I am, 6'5", physical stud, D1 athlete. Like, I walk into a room, people turn heads. I'm in the weight room. I'm one of the strongest guys there. Like, I took a lot of pride in that. And then it's gone. And I'm looking in the mirror and I can see the ridges in my sternum and on my rib cage and the atrophy in my muscles. And I see a person who I just wasn't that proud to see. And then beyond that, I think of all these challenges that I'm going through, where my life looks so different now. And there's so many things that I can't do that others can. Now, for me, I don't have a choice of whether to deal with that or not. It's either I take that on or I kind of do nothing with my life. But I thought, who in their right mind would want to date me, would want to marry me and be my life partner? I don't know if I'd take this on myself. Why would anybody else do that? And my life completely changed when I met my wife, because I found this person who saw me and loved me for who I was on the inside. It doesn't matter how I looked, and it didn't matter what I was able to do. It was that real internal worth of who I am that was worthy of her love. And we got married on November of 2023, one of the greatest days of my life, and was able to stand for our wedding and dance together. And she completely changed everything for me and helped me to really learn to love myself and who I was. Because I'm worthy of her love, and I'm worthy of her spending the rest of her life with me. And I think that's just a universal lesson for all of us, that all of us are worthy of love. And it's not about how we look. It's not about our accomplishments in life. It's about finding that person who really sees the value of who we are, and knowing that we're worthy of love, I think, is something that just changes our entire life.
Well, so will being a dad. I'm going to tell you that.
Yes, I know. That is just the most exciting part. And it's fun. I found out in the news like right before the book released. I'm like, can I get this in there? It's just so amazing. A due date is Christmas Day. So we got our plans all together. And I'm so excited, because when you have an injury like this, it can be very difficult to be able to have your own biological child. So when we heard this news, it was so funny. I didn't even cry. Like, I was just in shock. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It's 99% effective. Like, are we the 1% here? I'm so absolutely thrilled, and can't wait for my greatest job ever, being a dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think you're tired and all that recovery. You just watch. It's going to be
Been
great.
there,
though.
done that. Here we go.
Yep.
Yep.
So, what are good ways for people to keep up with your journey?
Yeah, great ways to keep up with me is social media. So Instagram and Facebook, I post those daily rehab videos, try to be that good boost for someone's mental diet. But I'm also on LinkedIn, X, TikTok, sharing these videos and insights, just kind of peek behind the curtain on my life and hope that it inspires others. And then that book, Paralyzed to Powerful, can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I did an audiobook myself, which I narrated.
And you narrated it, which I really liked. I
Yeah,
thought that
I
was a
did.
really great idea.
Yeah, I think it's great when you have that personal story told in the author's voice. It's been wonderful to see the reception of how this book has really helped people. But if you just look up Robert Paler on any of those platforms, you can find me there. I kind of got a monopoly on the name. There's not a lot of Palers out there. So easy to find me. And then website is robertpaler.com.
Listen, I'm going to tell you one thing. I know when you used to walk in there as the big rugby star, you owned the room. You kind of still own the room, friend.
Thank you. Appreciate
You
it.
still own the room, which is why you have gone off in this path and are sharing your story. And I can see why people resonate with it so much.
Thank you. I'm lucky to do it. If I were to go back and tell myself on day one what I was going to be able to do in my life, I would have just wept. I mean, this has just been living out a dream in my life. I'm so grateful for every day, and it's amazing how this all turned out.
Thanks for listening. You'll find even more episodes of Dying to Ask on Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. Take us on the go, and don't forget to leave us a rating or review, and please share the show.